Hey, good weekend to you. Welcome to Leading Edge. I'm Jerry Anderson. Ahead, the man who fought and won his court battle, contending that the way the state of Ohio funds public education is unconstitutional. He is back, and he is still fighting for public education. His target this time is school vouchers, Ohio's Ed Choice program, and he tells us why that's ahead of us. But up first, is this it? Did we finally get a breakthrough this week that could lead to cleaning up the western basin of Lake Erie, our end of the lake, the home to huge annual algal blooms, which years ago actually forced hundreds of thousands of Toledo water customers to turn off the faucet? The water wasn't fit to drink. In Cleveland, an agreement was reached involving the U.S. EPA, which could force the hand of agencies who, so far, frankly, have done little of substance to remedy the lake's algal bloom problem. Now, folks, they only did so after they had been sued by the Environmental Law and Policy Center on behalf of advocates of Clean Lake Erie, and yes, the Lucas County Commissioners. Joining me is gentlemen, did you found the Advocates for Clean Lake Erie, Mike Ferner?
Yes, yeah, we did. Myself and a couple other people.
Yeah. And so this is, you were out first in front of everybody, and now you're going, by the way, just Lake Erie Advocates, right? Nice and clean. Right. Okay.
Right.
So is this a win?
Well, yes, it is. The question of how big a win it is really remains to be seen, but the state agencies, Ohio EPA and the US EPA, can no longer just refuse to follow the law. You probably know that 3 or 4 years ago now, we filed a lawsuit in federal court to try to force those two agencies to comply with the Clean Water Act because they just were not doing what they were supposed to do. And so it's taken this long, since July of 2017, wow, to finally get them to agree that they're going to follow the law.
All right, let's talk about what we have agreed to, because we don't have a final agreement yet, folks. We seem to have an agreement saying that, hey, guess what, folks, we will have an agreement no later than October, I think, 29th. But the two sides have agreed to something called a, quote, consent decree, which, Mike Ferner, that would have the force of law, and which would do what?
It will have the force of law. October 29th is the deadline that's been set for both sides to agree to the exact wording of what we discussed in Cleveland on Monday. So after October 29th, within just a few days, it will be published in the Federal Register for a comment period, which I believe is 30 days. And then, assuming nothing goes dramatically haywire, it will go back to Judge Carr for his signature, and it will have the force of law.
Let's talk about this. Lake Advocates have long pushed for something called, you know this well, TMDL, a total maximum daily load. As I understand this, Mike Ferner, a quantifiable, measurable limit on things like, yeah, phosphorus being put into the watershed and ultimately into Lake Erie, feeding the algae. So this would be the largest TMDL in the country. Is that a correct statement?
Well, the one for Chesapeake Bay was larger, but this would be the largest one going on now. Yes.
Okay. And we think that is important because it is, as I said, it will be quantifiable, it will be measurable, and somebody will be able to stand up and say, hey, somebody's not playing by the rules here.
Correct. And the way that you stand up and say somebody isn't playing by the rules, unfortunately, requires filing a lawsuit. Now, we can do that informally, and our group is going to be following this process very closely. And if the rules aren't being followed, we can say something, but really when it comes down to cases, we would need to go into court to file a lawsuit against the EPA, but we hope that it doesn't get to that point.
Now, we know this TMDL, total maximum daily load approach, was used in, as you point out correctly, cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay. Does this now, and would this, my friend, involve identifying polluters, and does it come with some enforceable mandates?
Yes. What's going to happen is the Ohio EPA will do total maximum daily loads. They'll establish this for the whole watershed, the Maumee watershed in Northwest Ohio. And what that means is that they will be determining the sources and the amounts of pollution and setting limits for how much pollution, in this case, mostly phosphorus and nitrogen, can go into the waters, creeks and ditches. Now they'll have to do this by a certain date that has been agreed to in the preliminary agreement, which we will be able to talk about publicly when that's released. And then the US EPA has got 6 months. They said they would try to do it quicker, but after those TMDLs are published by the Ohio EPA, the US EPA has 6 months to say whether those are sufficient or they're not. So during the hearing, we tried to speed up the timetable as much as we could. And I guess we got it a little faster than it would have been otherwise, but it's still going to be a while before the Ohio EPA establishes the TMDLs, and then we've got the approval period for the US EPA.
He's Mike Ferner. We're going to take a break. This is Leading Edge. Much more. I think this is important stuff. I know we're all getting impatient, but I think we have a breakthrough. We're going to talk about this more when we come back on Leading Edge.